Hi everybody, this is Hector. I'm a designer at Google, I'm a failed engineer and a failed artist, but a designer at heart. I'm here with a friend of mine, Cynthia, Dr. Cynthia. She is a professor at the MIT Media Lab and she directs the Personal Robot Group.
It's great to be here, Hector. Can AI help us to flourish? We often don't ask that question, right? And when you start to ask that question, you start to realize, again, that the how is also important, that the experience is important.
I completely agree, and I think that it might be sometimes, I love the word flourish, it's so foundational, and because I think flourish is not just about efficiency, and that's, I think, one of the main motivators in technology. I have an example that I like to tell my teams is this notion of the data sets that AI is mimicking or learning from are usually driven by making a task better. But it's not about, like you said, doing something, but it's enabling or flourishing. So I was giving the example, say, a lot of people now have automatic sprinklers. So they turn on and off, all in the sake of saving you water, I don't know, keep a level of humidity or whatnot, right? And over time, they train and they learn. So basically, after a few years, everybody will have the best sprinklers in the world. Sadly, what these sprinklers will also be getting rid of is those accidents that are often useful for social interactions, like me walking my dog, and then when I'm passing by, I get wet by the sprinkler of my neighbor. That will never happen in an efficiency-driven world, right? Because it will have a sensor that will stop the water. And those accidents that might seem trivial help to social cohesion or social interaction. And I'm worried that when we train technology in such a perfectionist view, flourishing is inhibited, right? Because flourishing might be by the view of a few, one of the view of the others, right? So what might be a mere accident for me might be a possibility for solving a little bit of peace in my neighborhood, right? Or maybe just have an excuse to invite my neighbors for a party, right? So those things that are, I think, very human and very simple in our own views, when you try to abstract that and apply it to technology, and you don't have the counterbalance of efficiency, it worries me that we will end up in a world that is quite boring and optimized. And I don't like that. I don't want that for me. I don't want that for other generations, because I think that a little bit of our chaotic messiness is what makes us. So I'm going to steal your word flourishing because it's so pretty.
You're welcome to it. We should spread it more. I love this idea, and I agree. It's, we know that people grow when we're challenged or surprised, or there's something serendipitous, right? Something unexpected, right? Mm-hmm. These are so fundamental for sustained human growth, right? Learning, changing, evolving. It's like, I think a good kind of meaningful lived life is where you feel like you are always learning and growing in important ways. And you can't do that when everything is just perfect and you're never challenged and you're never surprised. You know what I mean? So I absolutely agree with you. We need a world that's messy and interesting and surprising and challenging, so that we have the opportunity to basically rise to those occasions, right? And to learn something new, and to be more interesting people, to be more empathetic people, because we can relate to more people on different dimensions because we've had more lived experiences, right? I think these things are really important. And, I know that, so you're a father, right? I'm curious about, have you changed how you think about design, now that you're a parent? I can tell you that it definitely happened to me. And so I'm curious that as a parent, do you find that it's as if you just saw the world in a different way, and it just changed how you do your work?
Totally. I think it was first shock, and then happiness, and then a huge level of worrisome and responsibility. I was giving a talk like 5 years ago or something when the World Cup was. I'm really bad with math. But anyway, we were watching Mexico versus Germany game and in our TV, and I remember that I was setting it up, right? So basically it took me like, I don't know, 25 steps into unlocking the app, YouTube, blah, blah. And it worked. For the next game, my daughter came and just say out of the blue, without, I don't know how, she say, oh, hey, okay, we'll play the Mexico game. And boom, it worked. I went, oh my God, because I didn't teach her that. And then I also like, how did the computer understand that? That was another thing that also blew my mind. But then I felt like, wow, access to technology, access to these tools is so democratic now, or it's becoming to become more like that, right? Even people that don't know how to read, because she definitely didn't know how to read, or they don't know how to do many things. I was like, for me, it was a huge moment of like, wow, I think as a designer, we can shape technology to become available to new people. And I think accessibility to technology is very good, because I think it ultimately will arm you with choices or information. So that's one. And the second thing that changed me is little humans and have this, I don't know where they bring it. Is it this stupid, enormous amount of curiosity? You put them something in front of them, they're like looking at it, they poke at it, they throw it, they chew it, and they move it. And next day, they forgot everything they did the day before and they do it again. And they embrace life and technology and other people with that curiosity, right? And then I asked myself, when did I lose that? What happened to me? Why am I like that boring version of myself? What happened? And the constraints of the environment that someone grew up or the expectations of society shape you. And I felt like that was unfair for me because nobody told me. And I'm hoping to now create a world in where people can be aware of that shaping that is happening to them, and they have a choice to be shaped or not. And if they're not, then we provide tools to counterbalance that. So, because I felt like I didn't have a choice, and I think if we have people more choices, they can figure out what they want to do. So those two shifts, curiosity, the absurd level of curiosity, and the second one was like accessibility to people that are not like me to use technology. Those two things were like, wow, huge shifts.
It would be amazing if we thought about how, who we think about now as being the users of technology are also implicitly part of what they do, are they're designers of the technology too. They're doing both sides of it. They're able to be empowered to create and change things, to your point, as well, right? So they maintain their creativity, they can customize. So I think this notion of, it's about empowerment, right? How can we really not just create experiences that are useful and efficient and usable, but can we create experiences that are empowering beyond just personalization, but I can change it to do something maybe even new that the original designers hadn't even thought about, right? I think that's a really provocative idea in terms of like who becomes a designer, right? Is it just the people who have the jobs, with that title, or can we see a future where everybody could be a designer too? I think that's really cool.
No, yeah, and I saw that actually with Jiwo, one of your robots. Like I was one of the early backers and I had one, and I remember showing it to my daughter. And she was like giggling and using it, but then she started like hacking it, putting hats in it, and using it as a way to do like a fake mirror, and encouraging you to use cameras in different ways, so understanding that she can point the cameras this way. And I thought, oh, look at that. I will never do that, right? And I thought that I think it's a great tool or a great prop. The way I explained her when we got her like several years ago, this is a prop. It's like the yoga block that I use because I'm old and I cannot do my triangle pose correctly, so I need a prop. And she's like, this is like a very cool prop and allows you to basically do what you want, but you cannot do it because you need some help. And she's like, oh, like what? Oh, like taking a photo or like reminding you to do the things you're supposed to do. And then she like got it. And then because just like a yoga block is so malleable and so flexible, you can do whatever you want with it. It can be one day a tray, or it can be also a robot, it can be a hat. She started applying the same mental model to the robot. And I think that was very, very useful for her, because then she didn't feel intimidated by it. She felt it was hers, and then she can basically use it as a tool to help her when she needed it. So thank you for that. That was very nice.
Well, thank you for that. That is a great story. I love when I hear Jibo stories like that. So
yeah, because they're not scary, right? I think sometimes people decontextualize, and they just put like the robot right next to you right now. They just feel like it's cold, evil against us versus the opposite. We're supposed to be warm in our team to help us and enable us.
It's so interesting how cultural that is. So the one thing I've definitely learned is kind of Western culture. It's this very, technology is this, it's a threat to humanity, but there's particularly robots, right? But when you go to Asia, particularly like countries like Japan, robots are fundamentally seen as benevolent. It's like that's the going assumption that, of course, Atom Boy or these robots are there to help you. So it's so fascinating how these cultural aspects, influence not only just kind of the broad kind of, cultural aspects of these technologies, but it gets embedded in our belief systems for the people who design and make these things, and how the media talks about these things and the very questions they ask about these. They become kind of like these stereotypical questions. And over time, you just get so tired of the same kind of question over and over again, right? It's like so predictable. And you're like, can we just move beyond this assumption of that robots are going to rise up against us in the apocalypse? Can we just move and have a more interesting conversation about how they might actually really be able to help us? So, Hector, I have really, really enjoyed this conversation, and we've covered so much ground. I always love to be able to talk about my kids, so I love that you love to talk about your daughter. And I guess is kind of one of our final questions. As a parent, our kids are going to face so many challenges, right? So many challenges, and we know it. And as a parent, I'm just curious for you, like, what kind of advice would you want to give your daughter to kind of put her in the best opportunity of not only success, but, being happy and living a meaningful life? And so, for me, in my case, I'll use my oldest son as an example. I actually have 3 sons. My oldest son is in high school, and he's thinking about colleges now, right? So we're in this, get ready for application phase, and there's kind of like this rat race around that. But I've always wanted him to be so true to himself. He's an unusual kid in that he's an amazing dancer. He writes music. He is super creative. His mind just works in making connections across ideas in all these different ways. When he was really young, he was almost like, we were concerned he was like almost borderline like attention deficit disorder. Like his mind was just everywhere. And now he's like embracing his creative side, but also he's really interested. He's really good in math and fascinated about computer science. And he's learning about like GANs right now, so he can like use these new AI, methods to generate like beatboxing and like bring it into his art. And so I've always wanted to encourage him to not shut any of those avenues off, right? To keep all of those aspects of him developing and moving forward, because I have to believe that as an adult, he will find a way to kind of stitch all these really important qualities together. And I think like creativity, I think this blend of the humanities with the technical and the creativity is going to be so important for our next generation to be able to embrace, to develop these experiences and solutions that these challenges that we face. So I'm curious what advice would you give your daughter for the future?
First of all, I was like, wow, that's a fantastic path of what your son is going through. I want to go through that path. That sounds fantastic. Dance, technology, math, and it resonates with a little of my own choices that I have to deal when I grew up. And I think that I will tell her what my mom tried to tell me, but I didn't listen. So maybe first to be a better listener. But it will be like, don't take life too seriously. Don't take things too seriously. And that applies to what society expects from you, from what you expect from you, from what others expect from you, because I do believe that everything changes and everything moves, and there's a lot of worry into fitting into other people's mental models, in other people's reward systems or validation mechanisms. And we often forget that life's too short. And this is it, right? This moment that we have in front of us. And I believe when we take things too seriously, we are overly preoccupied about the what if, that if I didn't do that, on what's coming next. And then you just lose sight of what matters, which is right here, right now. So probably need a better way of articulating that to her. But that will be it. Like, don't take things too seriously.
That is awesome. Keep it playful.
Yes. And maybe we can learn something from her too.
Absolutely. Fantastic.
I love this conversation. Thank you. I love how we went all over the place in a very fluid and organic way. I'm more fascinated than ever around that. I think that we both implicitly or explicitly try to push this notion of emotion, human warmth, to be better understood, to shape the tools and products and research or anything we're creating as a society, to be part of a formal practice to inform what we do in a much better way.
Absolutely. Yeah. So just thank you so much. This has been such a great conversation. And I will take away a number of things that you said to help me in what I do in the future.
And I'm going to steal flourish, by the way. So.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.